The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber stretched high above, its walls pulsing with soft blue light. Jin Park adjusted his tie and took a deep breath as he faced the most powerful beings in the galaxy. 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each one looking down at the human delegation with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. The Zentari Prime Minister's 4 tentacles moved restlessly as he prepared to speak. His ancient voice echoed through the chamber's translation system, reaching every corner of the vast space. Behind him, holographic displays showed humanity's colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. "For 3 years we have tried to guide your species," the Prime Minister began, his tentacles now still. "We offered you the gift of true civilization. We showed you how every successful species organizes itself, yet you continue to resist." Nah. Kim felt her heart pounding as she stood beside Jin. Her military uniform felt heavy under the stares of hundreds of alien eyes. She had spent months preparing for this moment, hoping humanity could find a way to stay in galactic society. Now she watched those hopes crumble. "Look around you," the Prime Minister continued, gesturing to the assembled representatives. "The Altarians function as one mind, one purpose. The Vegan Collective has eliminated conflict through perfect order. The hegemony of worlds maintains peace through clear hierarchy. Every species here has learned the same lesson. Individual desires must serve the greater good." Jin Park remained silent, his face showing no emotion. He had heard these arguments countless times during the negotiations. The galaxy demanded that humanity abandon democracy, abandon personal freedoms, abandon everything that made them human. Captain Wu Li sat in the observer section, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. As captain of the UES Defiance, he had fought pirates and raiders to protect human colonies. Now he felt helpless, watching diplomats decide his people's fate with words instead of weapons. "Your species clings to chaos," the Prime Minister's voice grew louder. "You allow individuals to choose their own leaders. You permit disagreement and debate. You even celebrate those who rebel against authority. This is not civilization. This is madness." The chamber filled with sounds of agreement. The crystalline Vorthan representatives chimed in harmony. The gaseous ethereal delegation pulsed with synchronized light. Every species nodded or made their version of approval. "We have been patient," the Prime Minister continued. "We offered you time to evolve beyond your primitive instincts. Instead, you have corrupted other species with your dangerous ideas. The Tau Ceti colonies now demand representation in their government. The mining world speak of workers' rights. Your infection spreads wherever humans go." Nakim's jaw clenched. She thought of the Tau Ceti workers, who had been treated like slaves until humans helped them organize. She remembered the mining colonies where families had been separated by corporate policies until humans showed them they could demand better treatment. Jin Park finally spoke, his voice calm and clear. "We came here in good faith. We hope to learn from older civilizations, but you ask us to become something we are not." "We ask you to become civilized," the Prime Minister snapped. "Every species in this chamber has made the same choice. They abandoned their primitive ways to join galactic society. Only humans refused to grow up." The hegemony representative, a tall figure in flowing robes, stood up. "The human concept of individual rights threatens the stability we have built over thousands of years. Their democracy creates unpredictable leaders. Their freedom of speech spreads dangerous ideas. They must conform or be removed." Wu Li wanted to shout, to defend his people, but he stayed silent. This was not his arena. This battle was fought. With words and politics, weapons he did not understand. "You have one final chance," the Prime Minister declared. "Accept our guidance, allow us to restructure your governments, submit to the greater wisdom of the galaxy, or face the consequences of your stubbornness." The chamber fell silent, every eye focused on Jin Park. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on his shoulders. He thought of Earth, where children learned to question authority in school. He thought of the colonies where people from dozens of different cultures lived together, by choice, not force. He thought of the explorers and scientists and artists who pushed boundaries because they were free to dream. Jin stood up slowly. He straightened his jacket and looked around the chamber one last time. These beings would never understand what made humans special. They saw chaos where humans saw creativity. They saw danger where humans saw hope. Without saying another word, Jin Park turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Han Choi and Mi Jung rose from their seats and followed their ambassador. They kept their heads high as they passed the alien representatives. Behind them, the Prime Minister's voice boomed through the chamber. So be it. Humanity is hereby declared incompatible with galactic civilization. You have 6 months to remove yourselves beyond the galactic rim. Any human found in civilized space after that time will be considered a criminal. As the human delegation left the chamber, they could hear the sounds of celebration beginning behind them. The galaxy was finally rid of its troublemakers, but they had no idea what they had just set in motion. Admiral Tae Yoon stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching hundreds of ships appear on his screens. Each blip represented thousands of human lives being torn from their homes. The evacuation had been going on for 4 months now, and the sight still made his chest tight with anger. "Admiral, the colony ships from New Melbourne are requesting escort through the Vega sector," his communications officer reported. "Hegemony forces are already moving into the system." Tae nodded grimly. "Send the Third Fleet to cover them. We don't leave anyone behind." On the main screen, he could see the steady stream of vessels heading toward the galactic rim. Cargo haulers packed with families, military ships carrying essential supplies, research vessels loaded with humanity's greatest discoveries. Everything they had built over 2 centuries was being abandoned. De Park pressed her face against the viewport of her transport ship, tears streaming down her cheeks. Below them, Kepler Station grew smaller with each passing minute. The massive ring structure had been humanity's crown jewel, a research facility where scientists from a dozen species had worked together to unlock the secrets of the universe. Now, hegemony ships surrounded it like vultures. She watched as their boarding shuttles docked with the station's outer ring. Within hours, every human discovery, every breakthrough, every dream would belong to the aliens who had cast them out. "It's not fair," whispered Jin Seo, the young engineer sitting beside her. He had spent 3 years designing the station's new quantum laboratories. "We were so close to a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication." Da wiped her eyes and put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll build something better, you'll see." But even as she said the words, she wondered if they were true. The dead zone lay ahead of them, a region of space that every galactic survey had declared lifeless and worthless. How could they rebuild their civilization in an empty wasteland? Captain J. Moon's scout ship, the Swift Arrow, was small enough to slip through the galactic barrier undetected. As the first human vessel to cross into exile, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. His crew of 12 volunteers had insisted on coming with him, even though no one knew what waited. On the other side, "Crossing the barrier now," reported his navigator, Sue Kim. "All systems nominal." The ship shuddered slightly as it passed through the invisible boundary that marked the edge of civilized space. On the other side lay the unknown, a vast region that galactic sensors claimed contained nothing but dead rocks and empty space. "That's strange," said his science officer Min Cho, frowning at her instruments. "I'm picking up energy readings from the 3rd planet in this system. According to galactic surveys, it should be completely barren." Jay leaned over her shoulder to look at the data. The readings showed massive power sources scattered across the planet's surface, hidden beneath what appeared to be natural rock formations. "Take us in for a closer look," he ordered. As they approached the world, their sensors revealed the impossible. Ancient structures covered the planet's surface, not the simple ruins of a dead civilization, but complex installations that were still functioning after who knew how many thousands of years. "Captain," Min's voice was barely a whisper, "these aren't just ruins, they're active. Something down there is still working." "Son." O had been a geological surveyor for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for what she found on that first world. Her team had landed near what looked like a simple mountain range, but their deep scans revealed something that made her question everything she knew about physics. "The mineral deposits here are impossible," she told her assistant Ho Park as they studied the readings. "Rare elements that should take millions of years to form are sitting right on the surface. And these energy crystals, I've never seen anything like them. The crystals hummed with power, glowing softly in the dim light of the alien sun. When Ho ran a basic analysis, the results made him step back in shock. Son, these crystals are producing more energy than they're consuming. They're creating power from nothing. That's impossible, Son replied, but the instruments didn't lie. Get me a sample. Command needs to see this. Yu Bei established the first human research outpost in a valley, between two ancient structures that her team had dubbed the Watchtowers. The massive stone pillars stretched a kilometer into the sky, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Her xenoarchaeology team worked around the clock to understand what they had found. The structures weren't just old, they were ancient beyond measure, but somehow they were still functioning. Dr. Bei called her assistant Na Lim from inside one of the structures. You need to see this. The entire interior is like a vast computer system, but it's alive somehow. The walls are responding to our presence. Yu hurried inside to find the chamber glowing with soft patterns of light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. As she approached the central console, symbols appeared in the air before her. Not holograms, but actual three-dimensional writing made of pure light. It's trying to communicate with us, she breathed. Hyuk-nam worked day and night, encrypting the reports that flowed back to the main human fleet. Each discovery was more incredible than the last. The dead zone wasn't dead at all. It was hidden, protected by technology so advanced that it made galactic civilization look primitive. The ancient builders had left behind not just structures, but an entire infrastructure designed to support life on a massive scale. Self-repairing systems that could terraform worlds in decades instead of centuries. Resource extractors that could pull precious metals from asteroid belts without any human oversight. Communication networks that spanned the entire region instantaneously. Hyuk sent his latest report. He couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had thought they were punishing humanity by sending them into exile. Instead, they had given them the greatest gift in the universe: freedom to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of known space. The ancient civilization that had built these wonders had vanished long ago, leaving behind only their incredible technology and a clear message written in the quantum structure of every device. This inheritance was meant for those brave enough to seek it. Humanity had been cast out for refusing to conform. Now they had found something that would let them build a civilization beyond the galaxy's wildest dreams. Yun Kang had never seen Earth, but she dreamed of it every night. Born on New Hope Station in the depths of the Dead Zone, she belonged to the first generation of humans who knew exile as home. At 25, she commanded the most advanced starship humanity had ever built, powered by technology that made the old galactic fleets look like toys. "Commander, we're approaching the sanctuary system," reported her navigation officer, Jun Park. "The terraforming team is requesting permission to begin atmospheric seeding." Yoon nodded as she studied the blue-green world spinning on her main screen. 50 years ago, this planet had been a lifeless rock. Today, it would become humanity's newest garden world, transformed in mere months by the ancient technology they had learned to master. The bridge crew around her represented everything the old galaxy had feared. Humans who thought for themselves, questioned orders, and still somehow worked together better than any hive mind. Her officers came from 12 different colonies, each with their own customs and ideas, yet they functioned as a perfect team. Back on Terra Prime, the capital world of humanity's new confederation, Min Seo finished her morning briefing with the colony representatives. As the elected speaker of the assembly, she governed not through force or manipulation, but through something the galaxy had never seen: genuine consensus. "The proposal from the Kepler colonies has been approved," she announced to the gathering, "of humans and alien refugees who made up their government. They'll receive full support for their deep space exploration program." The chamber buzzed with discussion as representatives from 300 worlds shared their thoughts. No one was forced to agree. No one faced punishment for dissent. Yet somehow, they always found solutions that worked for everyone. Ho Jiang, the Confederation's defense minister, watched the proceedings with satisfaction. He had fought in the old days, when humanity struggled under galactic oversight. Now he commanded fleets that could defend dozens of species who had chosen freedom over the false security of the Council's rigid order. In the Titan system, Gun Park stood on the observation deck of his command ship, watching mechanical giants reshape a world below. The terraforming machines moved like metallic mountains, turning dead soil into fertile ground and poisonous atmosphere into breathable air. How? Long until completion? Asked his assistant, Eugene, a young woman whose grandparents had fled Council space to join humanity's exodus. 3 months, Gunn replied, still amazed by the answer. The ancients built these machines to work fast. What used to take us centuries now happens in seasons. The terraforming technology was just one of many gifts they had inherited. The ancient civilization that once ruled this region had left behind tools that seemed to anticipate every need. Machines that could analyze a world and determine the perfect ecosystem for it. Devices that could guide evolution itself, creating new species designed to thrive in specific environments. Deep in the asteroid fields of the Outer Rim, So Kim managed mining operations that spanned hundreds of star systems. Her control room displayed a 3-dimensional map showing thousands of robotic harvesters at work, stripping precious metals from asteroids and gas giants with surgical precision. Production is up 12% this quarter, reported her deputy Day Lim, a brilliant engineer who had designed most of the self-replicating systems. The new harvesters are more efficient than we projected. So smiled as she watched the numbers climb. The wealth they generated didn't flow to corporate masters or alien overlords. Every gram of rare metal, every fusion fuel pellet, every manufactured component belonged to the Confederation as a whole. They had built an economy based on abundance rather than scarcity. The harvesters were Day's masterpiece, machines that could build copies of themselves using raw materials from asteroids. They spread through space like a silver tide, turning worthless rocks into the foundation of human prosperity. What made them truly revolutionary was their programming. They were designed to stop before depleting any system, leaving enough resources for natural processes to continue. On the archive world of New Athens, Haye Yu finished her latest report on the Confederation's political structure. As humanity's chief historian, she had spent decades documenting their unique experiment in voluntary government. It shouldn't work, she wrote in her daily journal. Every species in the galaxy believes that civilization requires force, hierarchy, control. Yet here we are, 300 worlds, 47 different species all working together, because they choose to, not because they have to. The Confederation had welcomed refugees from across the galaxy, species that had been conquered, enslaved, or simply displaced by the Council's rigid order, found new homes in human space. They brought their own knowledge, their own cultures, their own ways of thinking. Instead of demanding conformity, humanity celebrated the diversity. Communication Officer Na Li was finishing her night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station when the signal came in. At first, she thought it was just background noise. Space was full of random radio waves and particle emissions. But as she analyzed the data, her blood ran cold. It was a distress call transmitted on emergency frequencies used throughout Council space. The message was fragmentary, broken by interference, but the words that came through were unmistakable. Unknown. Attackers. Conventional weapons ineffective. Requesting immediate assistance. Na's hands shook as she enhanced the signal. The timestamp showed the message was only hours old. Something was attacking the galactic core, something that could tear through Council defenses like paper. She immediately contacted President Jin-O, the former diplomat who now led humanity's government. Jin had been elected not through propaganda or manipulation, but because people trusted his judgment. At 68, he still remembered the day humanity was cast out of civilized space. "Mr. President," Na said as his tired face appeared on her screen, "we're receiving distress calls from Council space. Multiple systems under attack by unknown forces. They're specifically requesting assistance from any available ships." Jin was quiet for a long moment, staring at the data she had transmitted. The galaxy that had declared humanity unfit for civilization was now begging for their help. "Prepare a response team," he finally said. "It's time to remind the galaxy what human civilization really means." The greatest irony was finally clear. Humanity's exile had not weakened them. It had set them free to become everything they were, meant to be. The first reports came from the Outer Rim systems, where Council listening posts detected something impossible. Ships were emerging from the void beyond the galaxy, not from hyperspace or any known form of faster-than-light travel, but from somewhere else entirely. When the Zentari defense fleet moved to intercept, their weapons passed through the invaders like they were firing at ghosts. Admiral Keth Vorlak commanded the largest fleet the Council had assembled in 50 years, but his plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes might as well have been throwing rocks. The enemy ships existed partially outside normal space-time, phasing in and out of reality like living nightmares. When they attacked, entire worlds simply stopped existing, leaving behind empty space where billions of beings had lived. Emergency. Transmission to all Council worlds, Admiral Vorlak ordered, as his flagship shuddered under another impossible attack. Request immediate assistance from any available forces. Repeat. Any available forces. The desperation in his voice was clear. The same Council that had spent decades perfecting their rigid civilization was now calling out to anyone who might help, even pirates and rebels they had previously hunted down. Mi Park sat in the captain's chair of the Concordia, watching the emergency broadcasts flood in from Council space. Her ship hung at the edge of known space, its adaptive hull rippling like liquid metal as it processed the incoming data. After 50 years of exile, humanity was being asked to return. Captain, her communications officer Su Nam reported with barely contained excitement. We're receiving responses from the 3rd and 7th fleets. They're requesting permission to cross into Council space. Mi smiled grimly. Tell them to maintain position. We go in first. The Concordia was humanity's newest ship, built with technology that merged ancient discoveries with human innovation. Its hull could phase between dimensions, its engines bent space itself, and its weapons drew power from the quantum foam that existed between atoms. Most importantly, it carried a crew that thought for themselves, something the galaxy was about to rediscover. When the Concordia materialized at the edge of the Centauri system, every Council ship in the area turned their sensors toward it. The readings they got back made their tactical officers recalibrate their instruments 3 times. This is impossible, whispered the Altarian sensor technician aboard Admiral Vorlak's flagship. The power readings are off the scale. That ship is generating more energy than our entire fleet combined. Admiral Vorlak stared at the vessel on his main screen. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. This was no crude human bucket like the ships he remembered from decades ago. This was something that belonged in the realm of gods. Unknown vessel, he transmitted, his pride warring with desperation. This is Admiral Vorlak of the Zentari Defense Fleet. Identify yourself. Mi Park's response echoed across every frequency, reaching not just the military fleet, but every refugee ship and civilian station in the system. This is Captain Mi Park of the Human Confederation ship Concordia. We remember being told we weren't civilized enough for your galaxy. Perhaps you'd like to reconsider what civilization actually means. The silence that followed was deafening. On hundreds of ships, beings who had voted to exile humanity 50 years ago stared at their screens in shock. The humans had not only survived their banishment, they had thrived beyond all imagination. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The extragalactic invaders' ships phased into normal space, their reality-warping weapons tearing through Council vessels like tissue paper. Then the Concordia moved to intercept. Mi Park's ship danced between dimensions, matching the invaders. Impossible movements with grace that seemed almost artistic. When it fired, beams of pure possibility struck the enemy vessels, forcing them back into normal space where they could be properly destroyed. "How are they doing that?" Admiral Vorlak demanded, as he watched the human ship systematically dismantling attackers that his entire fleet couldn't touch. On the surface of New Altair, the capital world of the Inner Council, Wu Jung led the first human ground forces to set foot on Council soil in 50 years. His Marines moved like shadows, their adaptive armor flowing around their bodies like a second skin that responded to their thoughts. The invaders had established beachheads in major population centers, their foot soldiers existing in a state between matter and energy that made them nearly impossible to target. But the human weapons were different. Instead of trying to destroy the invaders with brute force, they used exotic physics to lock the creatures into normal space-time. "Target acquired," reported Sergeant Darmoon as she aimed her quantum rifle at an invader. The weapon hummed as it fired, creating a bubble of stabilized reality around the creature. Once locked into normal physics, the alien became vulnerable to conventional attacks. But the real shock came when the human transport ships began landing their reinforcements. Tai Kim stepped off the first transport and surveyed the battlefield with satisfaction. Behind him came soldiers and medics representing dozens of species that the galaxy had written off as extinct. "Impossible," breathed the Altarian governor, as he watched Cytherian warriors emerge from human ships. The Cytherians had been wiped out by a council pacification campaign 3 centuries ago. Yet here they were, armed with weapons that made council technology look primitive. The Valan refugees followed, their crystalline forms sparkling in the alien sunlight. They had been declared extinct when their homeworld was strip-mined by council corporations. The Nethys came next, winged beings whose entire species had supposedly died when their star went nova. Each group bore the insignia of the Human Confederation alongside their own ancient symbols. Han Ju, humanity's diplomatic envoy, addressed the stunned council representatives who had gathered to witness the impossible. His words were broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every world that had once voted to exile humanity. "You believed we were uncivilized because we refused to abandon our values," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 50 years of exile. "You thought strength came from conformity, order from oppression, peace from silence. But look around. Every species here was cast out, conquered, or written off by your perfect civilization. We welcomed them all." The camera drones captured the faces in the crowd, not just humans, but dozens of species that were supposed to be myths and memories. All of them standing as equals, all of them free. "You didn't exile humanity," Han continued, his words echoing in the sudden silence. "You freed us to become what you never could. You gave us the chance to build something better." As the last of the invaders fell back before the combined might of humanity and their allies, the galaxy faced a truth that shattered everything they thought they knew about civilization. The troublemakers they had cast out had not just survived, they had built something magnificent. The human fleet emerged from the dead zone like nothing the galaxy had ever witnessed. These weren't just ships. They were floating cities that made the Council's mighty warships look like toys. The command vessel alone stretched across space for miles, its hull gleaming with technology that shouldn't exist. Inside, humans worked alongside species everyone thought were extinct, creatures with scales, beings made of light, and races that had vanished centuries ago now served together under one banner. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as this impossible armada approached Council space. No threats were made, no weapons fired. Instead, a simple message echoed across every communication channel: "Join us in freedom or remain trapped in your old ways." The choice was yours. Council members who had once laughed at humanity now trembled. Their grand fleets, which had terrorized systems for millennia, suddenly seemed outdated and weak. The humans had done more than survive in the dead zone. They had thrived. They had built alliances with the lost ones, learned their technologies, and created something entirely new. One by one, species began abandoning the Council. The Altarians, tired of being second-class citizens, were the first to leave. They found refuge among the humans who welcomed them without judgment. The Vegas, who had suffered under Council taxation for generations, broke their chains and joined the growing Confederation. Even races that had supported humanity's exile began switching sides. The transformation wasn't violent. There were no great battles or conquered worlds. Instead, freedom spread like wildfire through peaceful means. Trade routes opened between human colonies and liberated systems. Technologies that the Council had hoarded were shared freely. Medical advances that could save entire species were given without cost. The humans asked for nothing in return, except mutual respect and cooperation. New Terra Station became the symbol of this change. Built at the crossroads of major space lanes, it wasn't a fortress or palace. Instead, it was a meeting place where any species could come to trade, learn, and share. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered there, not as subjects of an empire, but as equal partners in something greater. The old council chambers grew emptier by the day. Species that had ruled for thousands of years found themselves alone, their authority crumbling. The Zentari Prime Minister, who had personally signed humanity's exile order, sat in his massive throne room with no one left to command. His generals had defected, his allies had abandoned him, and his empire had chosen freedom over fear. The humans didn't gloat or seek revenge. They simply continued building their confederation, welcoming anyone who wanted to join. Former enemies became allies. Ancient feuds were forgotten in the face of shared prosperity. The galaxy was transforming, and nothing could stop it. What made this revolution unique was its foundation. Unlike the Council's rule through force, the Confederation grew through choice. Planets weren't conquered, they volunteered. Species weren't enslaved, they were liberated. The humans had learned from their exile that true strength came from unity, not domination. As the Confederation expanded, it brought changes the galaxy had never imagined. Closed borders opened. Forbidden technologies were shared. Races that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together on human ships. The impossible became commonplace, and the galaxy flourished like never before. The Council's remaining leaders tried desperately to maintain control. They offered bribes, made threats, and promised reforms. But it was too late. The galaxy had tasted freedom and refused to go back. System after system declared independence and joined the Human Confederation. Within a year, the mighty Galactics Council controlled only a handful of worlds. Perhaps the most remarkable change was in how conflicts were resolved. Under the Council, disputes meant war. Under the Confederation, they meant negotiation. Human mediators trained in the harsh lessons of the Dead Zone helped species find common ground. Resources were shared rather than fought over. Knowledge flowed freely instead of being hoarded. The final message to the old council came not as a threat, but as gratitude. The humans thanked them for the exile that had taught humanity its greatest lesson, that freedom shared is freedom multiplied. The council had tried to destroy humanity by casting them out. Instead, they had created their own downfall. As years passed, the Confederation grew stronger while the council faded into history. New generations were born who knew only freedom and cooperation. The dark days of oppression became stories told to remind people what they had escaped. The Dead Zone, once a place of exile, became a symbol of transformation. The humans never forgot their origins or the struggle that shaped them. They remembered the fear, the desperation, and the choice to become something better. That memory guided their actions as they helped reshape galactic civilization. They had been given a second chance and were determined to use it wisely. In the end, humanity's greatest revenge wasn't destruction or domination. It was proving that a better way existed. They showed the galaxy that strength could come from compassion, that unity could arise from diversity, and that true civilization meant lifting others up rather than keeping them down. The empire built on fear crumbled before the Confederation built on hope, and the galaxy would never be the same again.